I'm going to set a timer. For those of you that know me, I can be a little long-winded. So to keep things on track, if I could ask you first, let's all take a deep cleansing breath. There you go. Thank you. That wasn't for you, that was for me. It allows my mind and my mouth to reconnect when I get up in front of the group, because you get a little nervous sometimes. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It's truly an honor. Obviously, I am not Governor Doug Ducey. I'm just slightly taller based on the picture of me and him standing next to each other. I was going to put his picture up here with me just to show, look, I know him, I'm not him, but I've visited with him before. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a number right now. I'm going to ask you to remember it. We're going to come back to it. Obviously, the governor is out today at the Cedar Creek Fire up in the Chino Pinetop Lakeside area, where they're not evacuating yet, but that's a possibility. As the Chief Executive Officer of the state of Arizona, from my perspective, Governor Ducey is right where he should be. And that's what the citizens of Arizona. So, yesterday, I get a text, and it says, what are you doing tomorrow? Well, you know, I've got some work to do. Can you change your plans? That is a loaded question, my friends. I am not answering that one until you tell me why you're asking. But as soon as she said that RLOT needed some help, I immediately was willing to change my plans. I've attended a few of your meetings. What a wonderful group you all are. And it's an honor and a privilege for me to stand up here in front of you today and visit with you about what's going on in our state. So as I stated earlier, the governor is showing his support for yet another community in Arizona that's being ravaged by wildfire as we speak. The last report I got, and I just got it at the table, is that fire has grown to almost 9,700 acres up in the Cedar Creek area. For those of you that are familiar with the Chino area, you have a lot of tall pines, and that fire is in the crown or in the top of the trees right now and spreading rapidly. As of today, we have 20 active wildfires in the state of Arizona, burning nearly 100,000 acres. Some of those fires are contained, some are not contained and growing, like the Cedar Creek Fire. And then there's others that were started by lightning that are over 30,000 acres each. There's two of them, about 65,000 acres in the state. And the State Forestry and the United States Forest Service is currently managing those fires. Now, why would they manage those as opposed to what they're doing with the Cedar Creek Fire? Because that fire is not in the crown. It's down in the ground. It's doing what fire is supposed to do naturally in our forest system to make a healthy ecosystem. Their goal, return those forests back to the resilient environments that they were meant to be in the first place. So let's wrap our heads around this for a minute. Now, I know some of you aren't from up here, but you'll get the idea. That's 100,000 acres, more than 100,000 acres in the state currently on fire. For those of you from the Prescott area, I'll give you a little comparison as to what that looks like. My agency covers 248 square miles of Yavapai County. 1 mile equals 640 acres. If you multiply that, that's 158,700 acres that we cover. The over 100,000 acres that are on fire currently in the state of Arizona are 2/3 the size of my fire district. That's a lot of ground on fire right now. So how do we deal with this? Well, one of the things we have to look at is an analysis of what's coming up. We know we're in wildfire season, and I just looked at a recent report from the United States Forest Service. See the red? Red is bad. And if you look, that's right where we are. Now this is a projection for July, but that projection came out before the heat indices started to rise going into this next week, which means that more areas are turning into a tinderbox sooner than expected. When we start temperatures rising well over 100 degrees. And in a fire situation with the folks that are on the ground fighting these fires, that requires more resources. When it's 105 degrees and you're in all that gear and you're hiking around out in the woods, that's more resources that have to be called in. Jacob? So how do we combat this menace in the state of Prescott? Or, I'm sorry, state of Arizona. We're in Prescott. It's usually the state of Maricopa. That's a little faux pas, sorry. So what you're seeing here is what they call a VLAT. You know the federal government, they're good with their acronyms. This is one of the few times that they took it literally. It's called a very large air tanker, which is exactly what it is. It's a DC-10, it's huge, and it can put a lot of fire retardant on the ground. But these fires require significant resources. I'll just let you soak that in for a moment. I don't know, for those of you that are in Prescott, the Tenderfoot Fire, you probably noticed the smoke that was banking down into the Prescott Basin from that fire. You can go ahead and cut that one, Jacob. Thank you. Speaking of the Tenderfoot Fire, here's a picture of it. This was a backburn. If you look at the black area, you look how close that was to the houses, that's a backburn by the firefighters that were on scene that helped keep that out of Yarnell. Now, since 2013, Yarnell, federal and state crews have worked jointly to set up fire breaks in that area, and they've made great gains over the last couple of years, which is, again, what helped keep that fire out of the Yarnell area. When we look at resources that are out there, here's a picture from a wildfire from last year, and another one from our crews from last year. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the state of Arizona does not have a lot of resources to fight wildland fires as the state itself. And the United States Forest Service does not have a lot of resources to fight wildland fires. So where do the resources come from? That's us, your local fire department. We are the ones that respond out to assist and aid these agencies. These fires are so large, no one state, no one community, no one governmental agency can employ enough people to fight this menace. So we work together. Now, we're very fortunate up in the Prescott area that we've forged strong relationships between the state, federal, and local governments. This is something you don't see in other parts of the state or in the West itself. Both CAFMA, Central Arizona Fire and Medical, and the city of Prescott cohabitate stations with the United States Forest Service, which makes for a great partnership. In addition, CAFMA just joined with the State Forestry Department, and they now cohabitate another one of our stations. So in my district, on the south end in Dewey, we are cohabitating with the state forest, or with the federal government, and on the north end, up in the Chino area, we have state resources moved in. This is the first time the state has pre-deployed resources in areas, and first time they've been deployed up in the Prescott area. We work together, we train together, we have the Basin Ops drill. That's where all of the resources come together to see how the next year is going to go. They work through channel arrangements, radios. We have a pre-fire season meeting where we get to meet and greet each other. We make plans. Again, we talk about radio channels, we talk about equipment availability, and we get to put faces with names. It's a very strong partnership between our agencies. And in short, we respond first, and we'll figure out who's responsible for it later. Because that's what it's about. It's not about jurisdictional boundaries, it's about community, and that's what we have to protect. As of yesterday, my agency alone sent 2 chief officers on Type 1 incident management teams to 2 different fires. One's heading to the Cedar Creek Fire, another one to New Mexico. We have a battalion chief serving as a single resource that's headed to New Mexico as well. And we have 2 Type 6 wildland units, that's this thing, with 7 people that left at 5 o'clock this morning for the Cedar Creek Fire. We've just returned 2 Type 3s, that's this thing, with 8 people from the Tenderfoot Fire, and just returned one of our line medic units from the Juniper Fire. The line medics are new to the Forest Service. I don't know if you're aware of this, but sometimes when you're in the mountains walking around in terrain that's not a trail, people get hurt. So they've decided, maybe we should have medical people here. Seems like a good idea. So we send paramedics and EMTs as a joint unit out to assist and work on the fire. They don't actually work the fire, but they're on the fire line protecting those that are fighting the fire. So why do we have so many fires burning in this state right now? Besides the fact that it's hot and dry and we have a lot of fuel out there. You're right, federal government doesn't let us manage the land the way we should. A majority of these fires are human caused. So not managing the land is one side of it, but the other side of it is us. We can be the problem. Unattended campfires. Sparks from chains hanging from vehicles as they drive down the roadways. Smoking materials flung out windows. I walked along 69 the other day and was absolutely disgusted by the number of cigarette butts I saw in the tall, dry weeds along the highway. Ashtrays are in vehicles for a reason. The side of the road is not an ashtray. We have people that put out their cigarette butts when they smoke at home in planters on their front porch. Also, not a good idea. This was in Chino Valley. 40-mile-an-hour winds that day. The resident put out a cigarette in a planter. And this is what our crews found when they arrived on the scene. These are things that we have to be mindful of. I know in this area a lot of people cut and burn their own, trying to control the growth on their property. They cut and burn their own brush, but you have to have a burn permit. And we get into restrictions on when we can give burn permits. And it's really weird because people will call knowing that we are in red flag conditions, stage 1 restrictions, and yell at us because it's their God-given right to be able to burn. Not so much. It is not your God-given right to endanger your entire community and your neighbors. But our administrative staff takes heat every time somebody calls in and they tell them, no, I'm sorry, this is not a burn day. These are reasons why. As of Wednesday, most of the federal forests in the state of Arizona, as well as local jurisdictions, because we work together, enter what we call stage 1 fire restrictions. I understand, I know you can't see this. This is on our website. It's also on the federal government's website. But basically, no burn permits will be issued. If you're smoking, do it inside of something and quit throwing it on the side of the road. That really is year-round. That's the way it should work. No outdoor use of firearms. How many saw in the news a Phoenix police officer was arrested because he started the fire in Clear by shooting tracer rounds into a hill? We are not immune from our own stupidity in emergency services. I'm not saying he was stupid, I'm just saying that we all do things that maybe we shouldn't. We should heed our own warnings. Cooking, warming, and campfires are still allowed, but must be controlled and contained. Not too long, I would bet we're going to go into stage 2, which then includes welding, cutting, grinding outside. That means construction companies must get permits from the fire department to be able to do that type of work in these conditions. So what can you do to be prepared? And we're going to talk about preparedness on 2 levels. How many in here have heard about fire-wise communities? That's good. And we're not going to get too deep into it because there's a lot of information, but how many of you have seen the long lines at the gas stations during the evacuations? Yeah, we're going to talk about that too, because those do not look like a good time to me. I think it's better to have a plan and be prepared up front should you need to evacuate. So let's talk a little bit about fire-wise. What are you looking at when you're talking about a fire-wise community? How many in here believe, and I'm talking to a bunch of Republicans, so I would expect everyone to put their hands up, in personal accountability? There you go. Responsibility for one's own actions, right? So if you look back in 2013 in Yarnell, that ranch that was burned over, I talked to the owner of that ranch, and it broke like 8 windows in an outbuilding. The remainder of his homes and buildings, untouched, all his animals fine. If you have trees in contact with your house and it burns down in a wildfire, you have some responsibility for that. Under Firewise, that's the concept. You can go to firewise.org to get more, but it's fuel proximity to your home. It's a zone approach to planting. Larger, taller trees should be further out from the house. The closer you get to the house, they should be plants that are Firewise. And if you talk to your local nursery, most people in the state of Arizona, most nurseries are well versed in what Firewise plants are. Cleaning gutters out. Not cutting holes in your house. I know that you won't do that, but there are people that cut holes and leave penetrations into their house and then wonder how the fire got inside. I don't know. Could have been the giant hole. Who am I to judge? In this area, we have POWIC, the Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Committee. This group is very active in the Prescott community. They have regular meetings about what it means to be Firewise, and they work with communities to become Firewise. But it's important. If you buy a property up here, you have some responsibility to maintain that. If there's a reason that you can't maintain it, there are actually lawn maintenance companies or land maintenance companies that are versed in Firewise that can help you protect your property and your family and your communities. Remember, a lot of these mountainous communities, a lot of these neighborhoods have one way in and one way out. Chief Light and I fought last year at the state level because there was a bill that was going through to say that developers did not need to follow local jurisdictional codes related to that. They wanted to go down to one way in and one way out. And then you wonder why we don't go in, because we can't get back out. You've blocked us off. If you want that, fine, but we can't get into your neighborhood. So these are some things. There's a website there for Yavapai Firewise. Even if you're not from Yavapai County, take a look at that because it is very good information. I want to talk to you briefly about, I've lost my little thing here, but we'll close up pretty quick. Preparedness for evacuations. You know, I've heard a lot of people on TV lately say, I didn't have time to grab anything. I grabbed a pair of jeans. I grabbed a couple of meds. I grabbed the cat I could catch. There's not a lot of planning there. I'm originally from St. Louis, not from Arizona. I don't know if you know that we don't have a lot of wildland problems in St. Louis. We have a lot of other issues, but that's not one of them. But we do talk a lot about preparedness when you're looking at natural disaster, and that's where wildland fire is. It is a natural disaster, sometimes human caused. Right now, a majority of the time. So how do you prepare? I like to put together a to-go kit. And that's nothing more really than a Rubbermaid tub that you keep in the garage or another area close by where you can grab things and run. Now, I am fairly sure that there are clothes in your closet that you don't wear correctly. It's just my guess. My wife tells me that all the time. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to prepare for an emergency. She doesn't believe me. But there are probably clothes you could put in that Rubbermaid tub so that if somebody says, hey, it's time to get out, you can grab that. Other shoes. What kind of terrain are you in? Do you need flip-flops and sandals? Do you need boots? Do you need shoes for walking? In case there's a lot of traffic, cars have to stop on the side of the road and you're trapped there. Lists of medications in your to-go box. Because if you have to run out and you can't grab all your medications, you need to remember what they are. And having the ability when you get to the destination to pull out the list of meds, the list of doctors and phone numbers that you need, then you can get all of those things replaced. Very important to have a list of contacts, family contacts. In an evacuation mode, guess what doesn't work? Cell coverage. Lots of times text will work because it's a lower bandwidth, but your cell phone likely isn't going to work. So have a plan. Have an out-of-state contact. Sometimes when these cell services go down, they go down in this area, but for some reason you can still get out to someone out of state. So it's important to have an out-of-state contact. When you're talking about out-of-state, think about important documents. I like to put important documents in a safe deposit box, but I also have important documents with my brother and sister-in-law in South Carolina. If something happens to my home and those documents are burned up or or my community and something happens, I can pick the phone up, call them, and say, okay, I need copies of all those documents back. And I have copies of all their documents, just in case. Take pictures of your valuables, guns, jewelry. Notice I went with guns first. I know my audience. Jewelry, electronics. Write down serial numbers of those valuable items. Burn them to a disk and put them in a safety deposit box, or keep a copy in your to-go box. Keep it somewhere where you can access it, because should the worst happen, at least when you go to work with your insurance company, you've got a disk you can give them, or a thumb drive that says, here's what I had. Here's the pictures of it. Here's the serial numbers of them. This is what was lost. This is what I need to get replaced. It is vital in an evacuation time that you do evacuate. I heard a woman on TV on the news this morning that said, oh, my dad's up in that area. He said he's not evacuating until the firefighters evacuate. Here's a note. When you wait to evacuate, now we have to save you, we can't get out. So please, as a favor to us, if it's time to evacuate, just evacuate. We'll get you back in as soon as possible. But for safety reasons, you don't want to be stuck in those areas. The bottom line for Arizona is we live in a wildland-urban interface. And that threat is real. Over 100,000 acres burning right now. We must take the necessary precautions. We need to heed the warnings. The stage 1 fire restrictions, stage 2 fire restrictions, listen to those. Our system in this area and across the state stands as a model for the West. Our partnerships are strong, and this gives us a leg up when we have a fire. But partnerships among emergency responders are not enough. We need you, because without you, we're limited on what we can do. Again, not a lot of resources out there. We're it. And we greatly appreciate Governor Ducey's support. I went down for the wildland briefing for this upcoming season. Got a chance to visit very briefly with the governor. He's a busy guy. I at least got to sit by him, say hello. And he supported emergency services in the state when it comes to wildland, and we greatly appreciate that. But even his support isn't enough. Truly, we need you. Have a plan, prepare, clear your property. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to lose your home or endanger your family, and make sure you have a plan for your pets. Imperative, have a plan for your pets. Dogs, cats, horses, fainting goats, whatever. I like those, I really want to get one. Seems like a fun time. So with that, I greatly appreciate your time and attention today. I apologize that I am not Governor Ducey. And I appreciate the opportunity to fill in. Okay, so the question was related to fireproof safes. The great thing is the document likely won't catch on fire. The unfortunate thing is they are kind of like an oven. So whatever you get back out might be a little crispy. You're welcome.
Between a firestorm and a wildfire.
Firestorm and a wildfire. A wildfire is what we have currently, but those wildfires create their own weather systems. And a firestorm to me is much like a flashover in a structure. It's when everything heats up, the fire starts creating its own winds, and it just explodes in flame. Very dangerous situation.
Chief, could you please address the cancers that firefighters are exposed to from the fumes and every day?
The cancerous risks. Cancer is definitely growing in the fire service. We're losing more and more firefighters to various types of cancers. A lot of states have presumptive laws because of the things that we're exposed to. Over the years, building materials, furnishings have moved from being man-made, for lack of a better term, from natural to man-made. So a lot more chemicals. So when they burn, they're putting up a lot more gases. I was talking to my contractor yesterday out at the house. We were discussing the difference between dimensional lumber of years past in construction and lightweight construction today. What we see is faster burning, hotter burning, and more toxic. And all of that gets into our gear. Then we touch the fire trucks. Then we touch the fire trucks without gloves on, and then there you go.
Could you briefly explain some of the federal restrictions that keep you and the other agencies from effectively managing our forests?
Sure, I can't speak specifically to them, but there are special interest groups out there, I used the politically correct term, that are convinced that allowing some of these fires to burn will upset and I like owls, don't get me wrong, and birds and beetles and stuff. But there are times that we have to think more the human component. The more we move into these environments, we have to do more to manage the lands. Years ago, if you look at pictures from this area back in the 1800s, early 1900s, the forests were absolutely beautiful. You could walk in the forest, get underneath the trees. You weren't walking through a bunch of densely packed brush and dry ground coverings. And today we've just let that go because I guess the federal government didn't want to deal with the special interests. You know, sometimes you have to tell people the things they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Gets me in trouble.
As a candidate, we're getting asked a lot about would we like the state to be managing the federal lands, and since you brought up limited resources, how do you feel about that?
You know, I'm going to stay away from anything political on this one. I think it's a partnership because neither the state or the federal government has enough resources to manage the lands. There are times in my agency we have a contract with the federal government and the state that for training purposes we'll send some of our wildland crews out with those crews to do some management burns, some prescribed burns, some brush clearing, things like that. But it's really a concerted effort. I talked to a good friend of mine last night, Bob Travis, with the United States Forest Service here in Prescott. He said they cover 1.5 million acres. He said we can't get to it all. I go out with him in the forest on the weekends, and he'll point out, this is going to burn, and there's not much we can do about it. We're making fire breaks, but it's not going to be enough. It's just too much out here. You know, there's just limited resources and revenues to dump into those programs.
Okay.